Hi, my name is Monica Irvine, and this is Becoming a Gentleman. I'm the president and creator of the Etiquette Factory, so we're talking about one of my favorite topics, etiquette. I'm so excited that you're here with me to spend a few minutes learning about what we can do as parents to help our boys become gentlemen and to also help our daughters know how to find a gentleman someday. You know, we don't hear the terms ladies and gentlemen that often anymore, but I wish that we did, and I'm trying to do something about that. Parents, being a gentleman, etiquette is so much more than which fork to eat your salad with. Spend a little time with me and you'll see that it matters so much. It makes such a difference in our children's happiness, both present and in the future, when they learn the definition of etiquette. Etiquette is helping those around us to feel valued and to feel comfortable. Every single skill that we teach children and adults at the Etiquette Factory is always based on this principle. You know, whether we like it or not, we send messages to people about how we feel about them. For instance, let's use table manners since that's what we're most familiar with as an example. If I sat down at the table with you and started eating like a pig, chewing with my mouth open, making a weird noise with my tongue, or maybe I sat down and took a couple of bites or ate my food so fast I was finished when you had just taken your second bite of food. Any of those behaviors would send a message to you, and that message would be that I'm only there for one person, and that is myself. I don't really care if I make you uncomfortable or if I kind of gross you out because, like I said, I'm here just to fill my belly and to make sure that I get what I need. Do you see what a selfish approach to dining that is? That's why table manners matter. It matters because whether we mean to or not, we send a message to the people that we're with about how we feel about them. Because if we don't care about their experience, well then what does that say about how we care about them as an individual? That's what we try to teach children. So parents, today we're going to talk about a few skills that every gentleman should try to have. If we want to raise ladies and gentlemen, well, I believe one of the best ways to do that is for them to see a living example in their own home of what it means to be a lady and a gentleman. Now, although this workshop is entitled Becoming a Gentleman, you're going to see that most of the skills we talk about are for both sexes. At the end of the day, it's just about showing others we value them, and both ladies and gentlemen should be doing that all day. So let's get started. Okay, skill number 1. I don't care how old you are, young or old, I teach everyone how to give a proper introduction because first impressions make a huge difference. So there's 4 steps to a proper introduction. Step number 1 is you have to smile. And sorry, I don't know why my PowerPoint is throwing up 2 bullets at a time, but it'll be fine. It'll work. But number 1 is that we have to smile. It's the difference in me saying, hello, my name is Monica Irvine versus hello, my name is Monica Irvine. When we smile, our smile is more than just our mouth. It's like our whole body language. And so we smile with our whole body, with energy. It sends a message to the person that we're meeting that we're excited to meet them, which of course is a polite message to send. Now, number 2 is eye contact. Now, during an introduction, our eyes are supposed to be on the other person's eyes 100% of the time. We don't do this. Hi, my name's Monica. It's nice to meet you. Why don't we do that? Well, because it sends a message that I'm insecure, that I don't feel comfortable meeting you, that maybe I don't want to meet you. or maybe a sign of dishonesty. You just never know, but it's poor body language. We've got to show confidence that we feel good about ourselves, and we do that by holding eye contact. Now, just so you know, when you're in like just a casual conversation with someone, your eyes can be on their eyes about 95% of the time. We don't want to stare a hole and burn a hole in their retina with our Superman vision, but we can break our gaze from time to time. But in an introduction, you are laser focused on their eyes. Okay, number 3 is you got to have a firm handshake. You all practice with your children. So in our life skills and our fundamentals for kids, we really practice with kids. So I can't really do it with myself, but in America, we take the whole hand. We don't do these little half handshakes. Used to be, I guess, 100 years ago, gentlemen would take the front hand of a lady's hand to shake her hand or to give her a little greeting. We don't do that anymore. In America, in the 21st century, it's the whole hand. Our thumbs are on the top, and we want to make sure that our little pointer finger doesn't work its way up on the wrist of the person we're shaking, because it's a little creepy and it makes us uncomfortable. So we keep our fingers together and thumbs on top, and it's firm. Now, kids, firm does not mean that we cause pain to the person we're shaking hands with. It just means firm. So don't squeeze so tightly that the other person is going, ow, that kind of hurt, because that would be rude as well. Now, number 4 is you have to have a strong voice. You've got to speak up. You don't want people sitting there going, I beg your pardon, what did you say your name was? But you want to speak clearly and slowly. Think about slowing down and going about 50 miles per hour instead of 100 miles per hour, because you want the other person to be able to hear your name and for your name to sit on their brain for a second or two before we keep talking. So a proper introduction would sound like this. Hello, my name is Monica Irvine. Oh, hello, Miss Irvine. My name is Robert. It is so nice to meet you, Robert. It's nice to meet you too, Miss Irvine. That's what it sounds like. Whatever they say their name as, you want to repeat back their name to them. Now, children, it's polite for you to always address adults by their last name and their title, unless 2 things happen. Unless the adult has invited you to call them by their first name or another name, and you have your parents' permission. So remember that. That's an important etiquette rule. Okay, do you got that? And then, of course, it's polite to remember the names of those we meet. So, a gentleman is always looking for opportunities to serve. And, of course, ladies are too. You all, I know you know this. But sometimes I think we underestimate what messages we send by our actions. For instance, whenever you open doors for others or offer a helping hand, you're sending a message. That message is, I see you. You matter. I can stop my life for a few moments and serve you. If I'm too busy to do that, well, then I've let my life get too busy. We've all had a door kind of closed on us before, and it doesn't feel good. It feels like you weren't important, that you weren't noticed, and that's not a good feeling. And that's why manners is about showing others how much we value them. And we do that by little acts of kindness. I'm never going to go into a door that I don't glance over my shoulder to see if there's someone in the vicinity behind me that I need to wait for and hold the door for. I open as many doors for men as are ever open for me, because it's polite to show that we care about others. Okay, next, We always want to look for opportunities to place others first. And this sometimes is easier to do than at other times. But any time that we can allow others to go first, it's so polite. We just basically think about it like this. Whenever you and I leave our home and inside our home, we're paying attention. We're looking around. Our eyes are open. We're trying to see, does somebody need me? Is there somebody that is there a parent that needs a third hand? Is there someone that needs just a little help? That's what a gentleman does. That's what a lady does. Let me give you a little example and brag on my one son for a second. We don't get to brag a lot, but this was one of those times, that I got a compliment on my son, and it made me feel so good. And parents, look, my sons were no angels. There's not a child that's an angel. Well, maybe not. But every now and then they do something really kind, and it makes you feel really good. So I was at a homeschool convention, and this mom came up to me. The day before, she had come to one of my workshops. And she came up to me and she said, "Hey, Miss Irvine, I wanted to tell you something that I think you'll like." She said, "Yesterday I came to your workshop and I loved it and I learned so much." I think she came to my Raising Girls to Be Ladies workshop. Well, so because she had a son and a daughter, and she said, and my husband took our two little kids with him so I could just come to the workshop and just focus on the workshop. She said, our two little ones are 1 and 3 years old. And she said, so I came and listened to you, and after I left your workshop, I met up with him, and I was like, honey, I want to tell you all that I learned. We have got to make etiquette a focus in our homeschool. He's like, honey, listen, I agree. He goes, I met the most polite young man in the men's bathroom today. She's like, what? He said, well, while you were at your workshop, I had to go change the diaper of one of our children, and I think it was the baby. And he said, so I go into the men's bathroom, and you know what that's like, trying to change a baby's diaper. He said, so I had the baby trying to change his diaper while I was trying to wrangle our 3-year-old and keep him still so I could do this. He said, all of a sudden, this young teenage boy came up and said, sir, would it be okay with you if I just stood here and entertained your little one while you change your baby's diaper? And he's like, that would be awesome. Thank you. So he said this teenage boy just knelt down and started talking to the 3-year-old, asked him what car it was he had in his hand, and kept him entertained while the dad quickly changed the diaper. Afterwards, the young man said, have a good day, and went on about his way. And she said, he's like, honey, I want our son to notice things like that and to do things like that. Well, she said later that night they were getting on the elevator. And she said they looked out as they were on the elevator and going up the escalator. She noticed me. And she said, honey, that's that woman that taught that etiquette class. And he goes, honey, that's that kid that I met in the men's bathroom. That must be her son. He said, oh, we're going to teach our kids etiquette. And she was gracious enough to come and tell me about this little experience with my son and her husband. And parents, I know we love it when we get a compliment on our child. But I've thought about that a lot because one thing that I did do that over time, I got better at it. In the beginning, I wasn't. And I noticed my kids didn't notice things that I wanted them to notice. And so what I started doing is just helping them notice things. When we would head out to the grocery store, it was like, okay, kids, we're going to pay attention. And we're going to try to see if we can find somebody that needs an extra hand. And it's amazing when you look for those kinds of things to happen, you're going to find them all around you. We have to train our children to notice people and to notice who needs help. Sometimes people will be no thank you, and we've got to be careful that it's the right situation, that we don't scare someone when we offer help. But 9 times out of 10, it usually works out really beautifully. And we want to teach our children as we are supervising them to help make sure it's done correctly. So a gentleman is always looking for opportunities to serve. Okay, next skill. A gentleman's speech is above reproach, and his tongue is used for good, especially at home. So parents, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, and I know you know this, but let me just add to what you might already know, and that is we need to think of our speech as we're either bearers of light or bearers of darkness. When people interact with us, are they grateful that they ran into us? Are they grateful that we had an interaction? Do they leave a conversation with us feeling a little better, feeling better about themselves, happier? That's what a gentleman's speech does when it is uplifting. And we have to make sure that we're careful with the subject matter, just the topics, and the way that we speak. Used to be, you went back a few years, 50 years ago, and there were fine lines between what men and women would speak about in front of the opposite sex. There were things that men just didn't talk about in front of women, and things that women just didn't talk about in front of men. Well, today, it just seems like there's no lines anymore. People just talk about anything and everything regardless of where they are. We used to be very careful at the dinner table that we didn't speak about gross things or rude things, that the conversation was uplifting. We need to go back to those kinds of rules because they make a difference in how we enjoy our life. So a gentleman is careful with his speech. Okay, this is one of my favorite skills to teach people, and that is a gentleman enjoys standing for others. And children do too. So if we were at a scouting event and someone walked in with the American flag, what would we do? We would stand up. And as we stood up, it would remind us of how we felt about that flag. It's this physical act that we do that shows that how we feel about this flag. And by the way, you all, I'm sorry that my little picture is blocking some of the words. I either had to choose one way or the other, so I should have repositioned my wording. But the wording says, a gentleman enjoys standing for others. So it's this physical act that we do that shows how we feel about someone. So the etiquette rule is the same. Here's the etiquette rule. It is polite for gentlemen to stand for ladies, and it is polite for children to stand for adults. Well, what would this look like in your home? What would look like this? If mom said, hey family, it's time for dinner, children and everyone comes to the table, and everyone stands behind their chair until mom has sat down, or the cook. It's this tiny little way that we can show gratitude for the effort that our mother or father puts into providing a meal for us, or grandmother. And then after mom has sat down, then all of the ladies at the table sit down while the gentleman remains standing. Yes, this means that your 5-year-old will remain standing for his 13-year-old sister that sits down. Why do we do this? We do this to teach our sons what it means to be honorable. Parents, your kids have to do honorable things in order to feel honorable. Honorable things require sacrifice. Sometimes I get a mother that says to me, oh, Monica, I don't want to make my family stand for me. And do you know what I say to her? You don't realize what you'll be missing. You don't realize the love that will increase in your home between you and your spouse, between your children for one another. But mostly what you don't realize is how you will build your sons up to be the men that God designed them to be. You all, in the moment, it might feel like a sacrifice, but just like everything, when we sacrifice for others, not only are the ones that we're sacrificing for feel the blessing of that, but we feel the blessing of that. And you want your children to have experiences where they feel proud that they did something kind for someone. And this is just this tiny, tiny little way that your children and your sons can feel good about honoring those that they're with. I dare you to try it. Now, women, no, I wouldn't encourage you to go home and say, hey, honey, from now on, I want you and the kids to stand for me. That may not go over too well. But you could say, hey, honey, can I tell you something that I heard today? Or maybe have them watch this workshop and just see what you think, see how you feel. Could we try it and see what happens? I would encourage you to do that. Okay, a gentleman knows the boundaries of physical affection. This means that gentlemen never offer physical affection to a lady in a casual relationship without her permission. It means that by the time our sons reach adolescence, about 12 years old, they have to keep their hands to themselves. It means that we don't hug and pat and squeeze and tickle women who we don't have a very intimate relationship with. Sure, our boys still hug Grandma and Aunt May, but they stop hugging their friends unless there's a real intimate relationship there. One of the most common questions I get and have always gotten from girls and women is, Mrs. Irvine, what do I do when a boy or a young man or a man tries to hug me and I don't really want a hug, or I'm not comfortable with that? In fact, one time I had a teenage girl say, Mrs. Irvine, it's my minister. On Wednesday nights after youth, he stands at the back door, and as all of the youth are leaving, he hugs each one of us bye. And I know he's just trying to show us he loves us, but I don't like it, and it makes me uncomfortable. And my answer to her was, and he should not be doing that. It's not appropriate. We have to teach our sons and talk with our husbands about this important etiquette skill. Number one, we don't know the personal experiences that people have had in their life that make them very sensitive to touch from people they don't know very well. We have to talk with our husbands about the fear that all women feel every week when they're walking to their car alone at night, when they get on an elevator and they're by themselves and a man gets on the elevator with them. We're thinking about it. The fact is, we know that if someone wanted to harm us, a man, chances are we would be a victim. And it's just something as a woman that we live with. But it's a reality that we need to speak to our sons and husbands about so that they can be the kind of gentleman that understands why there should be physical distance between them and a woman they don't know. So they will understand that just throwing their hand out to meet a woman that they don't know is too forward. But a gentleman waits for the woman to extend her hand first. And if she doesn't, then he simply just uses his head as the handshake. Oh, it's nice to meet you, Mrs. Irvine. Because it's a woman's decision whether she makes physical contact with a gentleman that she doesn't know. Talk about it, you all. I was one of those parents that we talked about it. We got into the nitty-gritty and we didn't hide things. We just talked about it. Because that's what helps your children and your boys to be responsible. And they feel good when they know what to do and what's expected. So talk about it. Okay, a gentleman teaches and counsels his children. He doesn't condemn. Parents, the way in which, the manner in which we speak to our children matters. If you haven't listened to the other workshop we were offering here, please listen to it. It's called Disciplining Our Children with Love so we don't break their spirits. As a parent, our job is to counsel with our children What do you think of when you hear the word counsel? Counsel with. To me, it means someone is listening. Someone is offering advice or maybe making gentle suggestions. I don't think it means condemnation, yelling, punishment, just telling me what I need to do, but offering suggestions and help and concern and love. To me, that's what counseling together means, is that we talk things out and we try to come up with better solutions. A gentleman counsels with his children in love and in prayer and in righteousness. And then he will be on the road to having a more loving, healthy, honorable relationship with his children. A gentleman always keeps his word. Let's just throw these up. This means that we do what we say we're going to do. If I were to ask your children today, if Dad says that on Saturday y'all are going to go fishing, what's the chances of y'all going fishing? If your kids would tell me, oh, they're really high, Mrs. Irvine, then good job, Dad. But if your kids would say, well, it's about a 50-50 chance or less than that, then we've got work to do. How do we think that we're going to raise honorable, promise-keeping human beings that keep their word, that are trustworthy, if they don't see what that looks like in the home? We have to model it. It means we start what we finish. When we make an obligation, we do it. It means sometimes we tell our friends and colleagues no because we have a commitment on Saturday to our kids, and we can't break those commitments because our commitments to our kids and our wife is just as important as any business meeting on our calendar. Sometimes I worry, parents, that children feel like their fun time with mom and dad is leftover time after mom and dad do all of their important things. We don't want our kids to feel that way. We want our kids to know that our time with them is cherished time and we value it highly. When do your kids see their names on your calendar? Okay, next skill. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. A gentleman has good hygiene. Yeah, you all, listen, I'm a homeschool mom. But y'all, us homeschool families, we could do a little better job here. We could do better. We are not helping our children to be prepared for the real world, to be successful in life, both personally and professionally, if we don't make our kids get up with an alarm clock, not you dragging them out of the bed. Go take a shower, put clean clothes on, brush your teeth, comb your hair, so you have fresh breath, so you're ready to accomplish something today. But allowing your kids to come to their desk to do schoolwork with one eye open, hair sticking up, in their pajamas, is not helping your children. I know why you do it. I know we don't have to be somewhere every day, but that doesn't mean that we don't get up and dress for success. Do you not behave differently in your PJs versus being dressed and showered and ready to go? Parents, we're trying to equip our children to be independent of us. And good hygiene is part of that. Help them to be successful. Look, we actually had to fire someone because their breath was so bad, because he had terrible hygiene. We've not hired plenty of people because of their bad hygiene. You don't want that to be your child. We want them to be successful in all ways. Good hygiene matters. Okay, a gentleman always honors and upholds the highest moral standards when interacting with any lady, regardless of her standards, values, behavior, etc. Basically, this means that we don't change the way we behave based on other people's behavior. We treat everyone with the same dignity, with the same honor, regardless of who they are. One time I was headed early into a convention and I stopped at a gas station to get me a drink. As I was going into the door of the gas station or the little market, there was this lady who was holding the door open to the market. She looked pretty inebriated. She looked like she might be homeless. She looked pretty rough. And she was screaming at some guy inside the market. And I just kind of went around her and said, "Oh, excuse me, ma'am," and went in. The guy behind the counter of the market was like, "Get out of here. Get away from this store." And I didn't blame him. It was his business. Anyway, I got my drink, went back, got in my car, started to leave. As I started my engine, I looked up, and there was that woman. She was kind of propped up against the wall of the market. And I was just looking at her. Sometimes you're kind of intrigued by those scenes. And as I was looking at her, I all of a sudden got this overwhelming feeling of love for her. I don't know, it was like I felt compassion towards her. And the words that ran through my brain was, "Monica, I love her." And it hurts me to see one of my daughters in this condition. I knew the Lord was reminding me, perhaps warning me, to make sure I looked at people through His eyes. It's important that we treat everyone as if we're interacting with the Savior Himself. That's how we can know we're being a lady and a gentleman. A gentleman always does his best to protect the reputation of the lady or ladies he's with. It means a gentleman would never ask a lady to do anything that might put her reputation in jeopardy. Let me give you an example. If my son knew this skill and my son was a teenager, let's say his friend Sarah invited him to come over after school to work on a project. And they were just friends. But my son showed up at Sarah's house, knocked on the door, and Sarah answered and said, "Oh, hey, come on in. My mom had to run to the store, but she said you could come on in and we could get started." Well, if my son knew this etiquette skill, he would know that he cannot go in. Not because of what him and Sarah might do because no one's home, but because by walking into Sarah's home without her parent home could put Sarah's reputation at risk. And as a gentleman, he would never do that. Parents, you have to say it. You can't assume that your kids understand these types of principles. You have to teach the principle. You have to use an example. You have to ask them to come up with an example. I had a family, a mother, after she had heard me talk about this skill, she said, "Monica, I wish I had heard this about 2 weeks ago, and I would have had that discussion with my son, and it would have saved him from the predicament that he got in about a week ago." He said a week ago, he was at a church activity, just a youth night on a Wednesday night at church, and she said him and this little girl at church, they kind of like each other. Everyone knows they have a little crush on each other. She said, but it's innocent. But she said they were at this youth activity, and one of them had an idea that it would be nice if they could go on a walk alone. And so they kind of snuck away and they walked the outside perimeter of the church building. They didn't think much of it, but on the inside, one of the youth leaders realized they were missing. And so they asked another youth leader, "Have you seen so-and-so and so-and-so?" And it caused for a little bit of concern, so these youth leaders started looking for them. And of course, as you might imagine, pretty soon all of the youth at church knew that these two were missing. And it was just long enough for there to be some question. They were found walking around the perimeter of the church building, but a little damage had been done to their reputation. A little trust had been hurt. Parents, talk to your children. Talk to your boys often. Of course, it's a lady's responsibility as well. But right now, we're focused on the boys. And so often when my sons would leave the home, I would say, remember, it's your job to protect the reputation of the girls that you're with. Don't forget that, son. Because I knew if my boys would focus on their reputation being protected, that it would protect their reputation. Talk to your kids about it. Okay, we're almost done. Another skill. A gentleman always does his very best to ensure the physical safety of all ladies. Now, parents, this doesn't mean that us ladies think we're helpless. But it feels really good when we know there's a gentleman looking out for us. So once again, if my son, who was a teenager, knew this skill and we had talked about it, then let's say I dropped him off at the movie theater to watch a movie with a bunch of his friends. And then I went back after the movie to pick him up. He might come up to me and say, hey, Mom, Rebecca's mom hasn't gotten here yet, so I'm going to stand over there with her until she's picked up. And they're just friends, but he recognizes his role as the protector of the women that he's with. Parents, I believe that this is one of those skills that men were made by God to have this role. I think that's why they feel so good when they do this role. Teach your little boys and your sons their role as a protector. It's something that will make them feel honorable. Okay, a gentleman has the courage to speak for himself. Parents, we have to teach our children, boys and girls, to speak up. We've got to quit speaking for them. By the time they can talk, we need to stop ordering for them at the restaurant. We need to have our child with us watching so there's not a safety issue, but say, hey, son, will you go ask the store manager where the nearest restroom is? Or, honey, will you go ask the directions for this or that? But we start little ways, helping our kids to learn to speak up and ask questions. And then when we find that they're in predicaments, we teach them how to speak up for themselves, how to handle their own problems. One time when my son was a freshman, he decided that he really, really wanted to go to a STEM school that was brand new in our city. He was being homeschooled, and we went back and forth about the pros and cons, and finally his dad and I decided that we would let him go to this STEM school. Well, I'm sure it was a good school, but once he got started in it, there started to be some issues. And one of the issues is that English reading, summer reading for that summer, was a book that the teacher said exemplified the spirit of the STEM school. In fact, the entire student body of the school was asked to read this book. Well, so I made one of those big parenting mistakes. Normally, I was much more protective about the things my kids read, but I just kind of let this one go. I thought, well, if this principal and English teacher thinks this embodies their school, surely it's okay. And I just ordered it and didn't even read it, didn't look up the reviews, and handed it to my son. Don't make that same mistake. Well, my son started reading it, and on the first day he started reading it, he came to me and he said, hey, Mom, I don't think you would want me reading this book. And here I am, the parent, but this is my black and white son who sees things very black and white. So here I was, and I said, "Oh, honey, are you sure? Are you sure it's bad?" I go ahead and read me a page. Well, so he read me a page, and as he read this page, my heart dropped, and I was so disappointed in myself that I hadn't done more research on this book. And I was so saddened to think that this entire student body was reading such a perversive book. And I was angry and I was disappointed. And here we had made this huge commitment to allow him to go to this school. And this was the first experience that we had. So I said, "Honey, get in the car and bring the book." And so it was summer, but I knew the school admin was there at the office each day because it was a brand new school and they were really busy doing lots of things. And as we drove to the school, I said, "I want you to handle this. You're going to go in and you're going to tell the principal why you can't read this book and how disappointed we are in the content of it." And you know what? Because I had been teaching that child his whole life how to speak up for himself, he was good. He wasn't nervous. I pull up to the school. He goes in. He's in there for about 30 minutes. I started to worry, but out he comes with a smile on his face. And the conversation went well. He had had other conversations in different areas of his life that didn't go so well, but this one went well. The principal wasn't even aware because she really hadn't read the book. She had read a synopsis of the book, and there she had advised for her whole student body to read it. Parents, remember, we're teaching our children to be independent of us. Did I want to go in there and tell that principal and English teacher what I really thought of them for giving this trash book to my son? Yeah, I did. But I knew that wouldn't help my son. What would help him is for him to do it. He was 16. He could handle it. We've got to turn more and more of our kids' life over to them so they will be prepared when they go to college and leave high school to handle their own problems. Okay, a gentleman's focus is always on the other person, not himself. One of the best ways for us to remember this concept is to make sure that we never speak for more than 2 minutes at a time, and that we ask the people we're with lots of questions about their life. I'm just going to show you one more slide, and it's this last one. A gentleman has a great ability to remain calm in the storms of life. Dads, I want to tell you that I believe this is a burden that you carry. I know when dad or husbands start losing it, your family suffers. Somebody has to remain calm when the house is on fire. And I think dads are the best people to do that. I think your children and your wife gain such confidence and peace when they've got a dad and a husband that's like, "Okay, family, yeah, we've taken a hit today, but we've got this. We're together. We can handle anything as long as we rely on the Lord and remain united as a family." If your family has to walk around on eggshells because they don't know what kind of mood dad's in today, your family is suffering. So I encourage you to be the peacemaker and the calm in the storm for your family. Okay, we're going to leave it here. I want to share with you one of the greatest gifts that I believe my dad ever gave me as a woman was he showed me what it looked like to be loved, for a husband to love his wife. My dad loved my mom. He was always doing for my mom. He was always bringing her home little treats, like a little bag of M&Ms. He used to bring her home hot fudge cakes from Shoney's. He served her. I would walk in the house and my dad would be over cutting something out. I'd be like, "What are you doing, Dad?" "Oh, your mom's got me doing some craft." He just never complained. He always just, If my mom opened the refrigerator and was like, oh, we're out of milk, my dad was out the door, headed to the store to buy milk. It gave me such comfort as a little girl knowing how much my dad loved my mom. I believe it has everything to do with the fact that I found a man just like my dad, for the most part. He treats me and serves me the way my dad served my mom. I think I knew what to look for because I watched my dad my whole life. Dads, never underestimate the power of your example to your daughters and your sons. Now, moms, I know many of you are single parents. Don't you fret about being a single mother. Your example to your sons and daughters means just as much. And your Father in heaven will stand in for whatever male is missing in your home when you turn to him and rely on him as the perfect example of a gentleman. I want to thank you for listening. I want to give you some resources. Take a screenshot of this screen. You all, I have a podcast every week called Parent Wise with Monica Irvine. You can find it on iTunes or other podcast platforms. My website is called the Etiquette Factory. You all, we have such wonderful resources for parents and kids. So that book on the screen, so I just taught you about 10, 12 skills of a gentleman very quickly. That book has 52 skills of a lady and a gentleman. It's a parent study for parents to study one skill a week so you can take your time with it, so you can really focus on how you can live that skill better, so you can be a better example of a lady and a gentleman for your children. That book comes in a box called Parenting Essentials and is on our website. And also on our site is both our Fundamentals for Kids, our program for kids pre-K through 3rd grade, as well as our Life Skills for You, which is our program for kids 4th grade through 12th grade. I encourage you to look at these programs. We have organized teaching manners and life skills for your family so that you can be more purposeful, so that your children can grow up with the skills they need to be the most successful, so they can have happy and healthy relationships. Please, I'd love for you to join us on social media, the Etiquette Factory with Monica Irvine, and actually my Instagram is actually the Etiquette Factory. Hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I hope to see you in person at a convention in the near future. Bye.